So for anyone who hasn't heard your music before, how would you describe your music to anyone who hasn't heard it before? What genre would you personally put it in?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That's a question often people don't like to answer because there's like when you talk about music, sometimes it's like you have the same problem a perfume ad has on television is that you cannot smell the perfume through the television set or through the words or through the music. And so they have to kind of create like some kind of feel of what it would be like to participate in that. So I mean, in that sense, we want to take people to the movies, like in different genres of movies too. So there's a cinematic element and quality to it. There's a storytelling quality to the music. It really seems to appeal to people who like theater and things like that. So the sonic landscape would be I what we're going for anyway is I loved bands that did concept records in the 70s and all the way up to the 90s. It kind of was a thing that fell into the background of culture. It's not something that's talked about much anymore, but the like Pink Floyd's The Wall, Dark Side of the Moon, Sgt. Pepper's by the Beatles, OK Computer by Radiohead, even this is a deep cut, Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche that came out in the 80s. These records blew my mind. It was such a different experience and that made me want to put them on start to finish. So we're like, I want to live in that world. I want to live in that world now, like with all of the technology, all of the things that has become accessible in music and all the styles. So we'll go anywhere from like straight up 70s prog rock, like all the way to, something that's even more like synth pop. So it just depends on the universe we're trying to enter when we tell that story. So the people it generally appeals to, I hate to say it this way because it sounds like a compliment to us, like our audience I interact with are all like really, really intelligent people. Like they kind of understand deeper concepts. They're a friend to philosophy and categories like that. They're really interested in the intricacies of the world. They're not just putting it on as background music.
Mhm.
So that's a long answer, but there's really, when people ask like what are your influences, maybe that tells you a little bit. I can say that too, like Queen, ELO, the Beatles, Pink Floyd. I named some of these bands, Radiohead. Not many modern influences. I think that Muse might have tapped a little on, my heartstrings at some point, and I think a little of Muse got in there sometime early on, but not so much anymore. So yeah, that's pretty much how you have to answer the question. So I could have just made you an ad, like a perfume ad that had someone running across the room in like a plague doctor costume while they were, angels were raining fire down on them. That might have been a better example of what our music is like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, speaking of that, I kind of actually did the opposite of intelligence. So I put it on as background music because of like Great Vacation just had a great sound to it. And then I was like, who is this guy? Then I started delving more and more deeper and deeper into it. And then I was like, holy moly, you got a whole story here. You like it's a book, it's a storytelling, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Oh,
Jeez
man,
Louise.
like I've had people tell me that same kind of story before, and I love it. Like that's exactly how we would hope it would happen, although you can't control it because it's like
Hmm.
it's almost like you get an idea and that's your music, and but the music comes to you like a wounded, like exotic or endangered species on your doorstep, and you've got to raise it back to health. Like you don't I don't really know where the ideas come from, but I know one of the things you don't want to do is domesticate it to the point where it only can do what you would hoped it would do. You have to release it, and so it can mean more to people and that there's layers to it. So I think there's an intuitive way we're trying to create things that there are layers for the people that want to dig in farther. I feel like
Hmm.
sometimes, like you just name a popular artist and you really want to dig in past the superficial meaning of the song. And very often in our culture, there's not layers there because they have shorter attention spans. I don't want to say they're superficial, but shorter attention spans, and they can't hold that thought as long because the world's so darn entertaining and there's so many distractions. So, but for the people that don't, they can hold a thought and dig deeper. And this is why I said intelligent, because generally people who are intelligent can hold more in their short-term memory, which means they can manage more difficult concepts, more complex concepts, and see how they connect. So I think that the experience you're talking about right there is like what we'd hope we have is that people dig in, they realize that like there's it's there's a painfully dense amount of symbolism in what we're doing where even if you get into the character names in the story you realize like oh I started looking up the etymology or just the way the name sounds and you realize that oh this was really thought out. So that's the that I like this idea of doing things four dimensionally in the sense that everything that we include in the song, or even like we made a film, everything you include in the film, you have to put something there. So why not put something there that tells more of the story? Just an example like that. There's in the film Queen of the Night, the actor, the lead actor had suggested to me, "Hey, why don't I wear white shoes?" And he just thought it would look cool. But then as soon as he said it, I was like, "Oh yeah, like because you're walking on the clouds, you think you're above everybody. This is the perfect way to include an element of the character in the visual that has to do with his story. So everything, every element that's included." Adds depth and participates in the story. So the more people want to dig in, I think there's more there. There's probably more there than we know. I think people pull out insights, and I'm like, wow, I didn't mean that, but yeah. So that's hopefully that's what's happening. So it's a little bit of a game.
I
It's a
think
little bit
that does happen. And
okay,
it's
good.
so interesting because I go on the Discord server and I ask people like a Great Vacation or something, it's just one of the popular ones. And I'm just like, okay, I think it's like, anti-war. And then they think it's completely something different. Like, and then it's just crazy. It's like you just mentioned the white shoes. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that before.
Yeah, I don't like to give too much of it away because that's
Mm,
as you as participating in the song, part of the fun is well, maybe someone gives you a couple of hints, but then you go out and you put the details together yourself.
yeah.
And I think that's a good exercise in general because stories have meaning, good stories, like the stories that stick around and we
Mhm,
keep telling. Like if you go back and you look at like why did Sophocles survive? Why did Oedipus Rex survive? Why did the Odyssey? All of these, the Iliad. You go back to very ancient stories. Why do people still read the Bible and the Gospels? Why do
mhm.
people still read, whatever, Paradise Lost? Why do these stories stay? It's because whether you like them or not, or whether you believe in them or not, there's a deep cultural pattern there that rings true for people. So I think that sometimes we can miss that in stories. So that's one of the things traditions we're trying to keep alive because in life there's going to be all these things that just come at you fast and you're going to want them and they're loud and they're salient and it's going to be self-indulgent, but we kind of get that like the wise people can suffer first for something even better later.
Mhm.
And that's what classic stories did. That's what fairy tales did. They basically gave you a reason to be a freaking decent loving person in the world like it because it was not going to come easily. Like love doesn't come easily, being like having character doesn't come easily. These things, that's why we follow the hero, so we understand in our own life like it's not going to be fun to it's not necessarily going
Mhm.
to be fun at first, but gee, in the end when we look back we're going to realize we dug up a treasure we never could have got if we were just self-indulgent and shallow and went with the culture.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just a great way to put it, honestly, overall. And that goes with me with multiple bands. Another band I'm gonna shout out here that I always talk to is Ginger Roots, and what they do is that they don't just make music.
Mhm.
They make a full story. You can delve so much deeper. It's just like you said, you can, and it's not as complex, trust me. It's not as complex as the Dirt Poor Robins, trust me, but it's a lot more fun. There's a lot. It's when the band goes above and beyond. That's what I love to see, and that's exactly what Dirt Poor Robins do.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, it tells you something. So when I see other bands that are doing that, I
Mhm,
get the sense that they really are putting care into it. In other words, what happens when you get into music, like some of you listening might found this, like if you're talented at all, like immediately people
mhm.
start talking about how you can have a career, how you can make money. And really you probably can't. Like that's the problem with music. You probably can't have a career and make money because there's a
Unfortunately.
zillion people trying and just a few you've ever heard of
Mhm,
based on that mob. So the chances you're going to cut through that are very small. But part of the problem and part of the thing that prevents you from cutting through that is
mhm,
that you take this thing that you love, that you wanted to go out and create things. You have an idea that you needed to hear. You have things you want to see. And that kind of gets hijacked by marketability and trying to, oh, sell it. So you start to conform to what does the industry want? What is the industry looking for? But all the greatest artists over time they might be doing that to some degree, but really, when the innovators that come along that create the new genres, that create the iconic things that last, they're kind of really making it for an audience of one at first. They're trying to create something that they really love, and they're trying not to lose sight of that love. So yeah, so when I see a band that like they're just doing all this stuff, whether or not someone's going to listen or see it or not, whether they have a big audience or not, like that's someone who really has a vision and someone who really has a heart for beautiful things. And so high fives all around. Like when I see bands doing that, I'm like,
Yeah.
man, thank you. The world needs more of that. We don't need more people farming us for our wallets.
That happens way too often.
Money can get.
But yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I should get on to my next question. Actually, move on. What made you want to pursue music in the first place? Where did you get your start in the music world?
Yeah, I had no choice really. My dad was a radio announcer and he was a big music buff. Like he's still a guy I can talk to about
Hmm.
older music and he like has this encyclopedic memory. Even though he would say he doesn't have a great memory, but he spent so many years on the radio he had this. And so he was always showing me stuff and he was a big Stevie Wonder fan and Paul McCartney fan and he was like talking about the songwriting and we'd have debates about those subjects. And my mom was a jazz singer and she could sing pretty much any genre, but that was like her like core competency and she was a very good like word merchant. So she wasn't just singing songs to sound good. She also cared about the words. And so
Hmm.
I was kind of drenched in this. So we were forced to play piano.
Of
And I didn't
course.
want to play piano. But when I remember I was around 11 or 12, I saw Prince play guitar and Eddie Van Halen. Like I saw these guys and I
Hmm.
was like, what the heck is going on here? This is way cooler than piano. Like, because I only played it, I didn't have a keyboard or anything yet. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to go grip my toes to the edge of the stage and melt faces. So I totally gravitated over. Once I gravitated over to guitar, I kept piano and I started adding other instruments, but that was the beginning of the end. Music was one of those things where whether or not I wanted to do it, I was doing it. It wasn't, you couldn't even say it was a passion, it was a compulsion. So I would have quit a long time ago if I ever felt like it, but I just keep getting up and doing
Hmm.
it. And Kate and I, my wife, who's the other half of
Hmm.
Triple Robbins, we talk about these things all the time. We get excited. And then if we ever think about, hey, maybe, I get job offers to do other things all the time, and I can
Yeah.
spend more time I could probably make more money in some capacity if I moved more into film scoring, which I've
Hmm.
done. But it's just not where we're at. It's like, no, we have things we want to invent and we want to see. And our community is the same way. Like everybody I talk, like they're doing some sort of world building, like they're creating their own fictional worlds. And I think that happened too because we let people in on that part of the process. So we show them the project as we're doing it. So if you come and
Hmm.
follow us on the Discord or you follow us, on our socials, you're going to get stuff in increments as we get ready to release the big story. So you can follow along with us and see how those worlds and those stories are created. But that
Hmm.
was it in the end of the day. Like I didn't know how not to. It came easy.
Yeah.
And I was willing to work hard on it. Like I had hard at it. Like there were so many things that I just couldn't. I thought could be good for money or a good career, and I just couldn't find myself doing those things every day, even though they came easy to me. So music was just one of those things where I'm like, this is my burden, man. I'm just gonna have
Yep.
to go be a poor artist for the rest of my life because I cannot convince myself to do anything else full time.
A dirt poor Robin, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, it's still yeah,
That's where the name comes from. But yeah.
yeah.
That's really interesting, really cool. But yeah, I always tell people it's like I'm a lot younger and stuff like that, but I grew up in a whole different world. I do appreciate, the world of Prince and Queen, and there's so many influences. You could really go back and go to all these great artists, but it's just very interesting to get it from this perspective over to there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, no, you have to have gray hair to have this perspective, I think. So I went
I
gray
get it all
early
from my dad. I get
and
it
I
all from my
ran with it.
dad.
Yeah. That's good.
My dad.
I'm your
So
new dad now, Benjamin.
yeah, all right,
I'm
cool. All right. Yeah, for me personally, I didn't do anything like I did try piano during COVID. That was my thing. I learned up to like 12 songs, but I did choir for like 12 years, so I just did a
Yeah.
bunch of singing, especially in church.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, they made you sing bass in high school or
Oh, for sure. Well, I was actually I was pretty high
because you probably
pitched
have
when
a
I
big
was
range.
younger.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I used to be was tenor one, then tenor two, and then it just moved all the way. And they said, "All right, screw it, do bass."
Yeah, because well, in high school, the problem is I'm a tenor naturally, but I can hit
Mm,
the low notes.
yeah.
They
Ooh.
so what happens is no one can in high
Ooh.
school, and everybody's voice is cracking, and so
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
stuck there whether you wanted to be or not. 'Cause project, and
There's nobody else.
if you can project an F2, it's like, whoa, this guy is a phenom in high school. And I'm really not a true bass, but and yeah, in high school I get stuck there. But I could tell that with the range of your voice when you were talking that you were one of those people too.
Yeah.
saying any of the parts, and then but nobody can carry the low notes. So hey, Benjamin, phase two.
Yeah, all
Congratulations.
right. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck with those notes there.
All right.
Yeah.
So for my next question, moving on. Your music often feels like it belongs in a world of its own. What books, films, or other media do you turn to for inspiration? I guess you kind of answered that question.
Well, I can kind of throw some stuff at you there quick because I noticed. So when we
Yeah.
did our first record, it's called The Cage. It came out in 2007, and we noticed that if you liked Moulin Rouge, you probably liked The Cage. So we did notice that there was something different going on in the sense that normal music at the time was categorized demographically, like, hey, 18 to 24-year-old girls prefer Taylor Swift, like something like that. And you think of, well, gee, guys from the age of 12 to 25 are more likely to be into hard rock. And there are certain ways you could rally people around a demographic. Well, we didn't have that at all. We noticed it was totally rallied around a personality type and a way of seeing the world. Like people, if you were like maybe not totally believe in fairies in Ireland, but you could be convinced, you probably could like our band. So there was that people who could see more of it, have a more of an enchanted view of the world when they look out the window. They see a world that's alive, not just like a dead scientific world of molecules and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So the people that go on the other side, it's definitely a personality type. So any films that go with that, like we love, if I was going to be a quick rundown of films, if you like them, you might like Dirtball Robbins. I would say, yeah,
Yeah.
Moulin Rouge was definitely one back then. Maybe we moved away from that a little bit. Labyrinth, starring David Bowie,
Yeah.
Connolly, movies like that.
Love that movie.
I think that's gonna sit with you as well. Or a movie like even a more modern movie like Hail
Mhm.
Caesar by the Coen brothers, where there's this
Okay.
intersection of politics and religion and entertainment and culture, like all of these forces that are smashing together in the world. We really that web and that overlap and that conflict it creates is really where a lot of our stories come out of. So we don't stray away from religious subjects. We do not stray away from
Mhm.
political subjects, although
Yeah.
the characters in our story that are really like get more into politics are kind of the
Yeah.
villains. The ones that are depoliticizing you, like come out and have a life in the
Yeah.
world with real people and stop worrying about things you can't change. That's normally the heroic, person in our stories. But all these things get included. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I loved your political song. I mean, it's literally titled Political.
Mhm.
That's one of my favorite songs out there, at least in the newer album. So I guess answered some of these questions already, actually. So you explore complex themes, such as the nature of humanity, existential questions in your lyrics. What drives you to tackle these deep subjects?
Yeah. Well, what is life like? So
Mhm.
we kind of get in this haze where we forget like why are we here? Like when this is part of the problem of and I'm not saying I'm not going to talk about picking a particular religion, but here's the problem with the secular idea. The secular idea, it does this thing where it sort of creates like, hey, we're gonna have a secular space, and what it does is it creates kind of a space for everybody to not have to have so much conflict about what's core to them and their culture and their belief system. And so there's some benefit from that, but you also everything's a trade-off. So anytime you pick a way to solve one problem, you create another. And
Mhm.
so it's just a matter of which problem do you want right now. So the problem you had is it creates this kind of nihilism and despondency because people are going to we're going to look up everybody's like most people have like a ghost story or throughout time if they throughout antiquity there's so many stories of people in consistent ways cross cultures of encountering things like angels and demons
Mhm.
and otherworldly things. And so there's a modernism that just kind of in a safe kind of sense wants to make sense of it. Like that's all baloney. The problem is you have like millions and millions and millions of stories, and then you're probably going to have something unexplainable happen to you at some point, and you're going to have to call yourself delusional if you want to hold to that. So I think that there's something that happened where, yeah, the world became disenchanted as we started to rely more and more on scientific fact. Although I think that's coming to an end. I think this is coming to an end.
Mhm.
You're seeing people that were like new atheists.
Yeah.
They're just kind of flipping, out of it. And I think there's something really wise to that because there's something so dehumanizing by thinking the truth is just brute facts in the universe. And truth is not that. Truth is more of a combination of things that are there and the right way to use them beautifully. For
Mm.
example, I could never know all the facts about you, but like you and I have already learned right now, we've got some things in common and we
Yeah.
can begin to have a true relationship. And I'll never know
Mm.
everything I need to know about you. So
No.
I'll never have the complete factual picture of what you are, but yet we can instantly have a relationship. And it's the same
Mm.
way with beauty. You can go out in the world and look at something beautiful, and you can try to describe why you're having those feelings or what it is, but it's
Mm.
very difficult to do. So there was this disenchantment where we think, well, we know what a tree is. We know what this thing is.
Mm.
We think we know, and we don't. We don't, even if you can say, okay, you can describe the thing that exists in its totality and its mechanical causalities, you did nothing to express why it's there. So the
Yeah.
view that's coming back in is that the world has a certain shape for a reason. And so look at that shape
Mhm.
and think about it and what it means. Why is there this diversity in the world of variation between people, but why do we see this diverse group of people as one thing? And why are this one thing different than the horses? And why is that thing different than a
Mm.
mountain? And so people are kind of coasting through life, like going after their products, trying to pay off their loans, building a pretty cage for themselves, and they totally miss like this. The stakes are high. You get one chance at this, and there's a reason you're here. So
Yeah.
think it's I think it's a critical error to think that's nonsense and that's a stupid way to look at the world because you're gonna
Yeah.
hunger for those answers whether you look for them or not.
I mean, that's just human nature. I mean, just always asking the question of why. I mean, like, I even think about because I'm a huge space nerd, SpaceX and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Well, I just watch. Well, I'm right down the road from them. I watch the launches all the time.
yeah, oh gosh, I that's kind of why I want to move to Florida, or Houston, Texas with their starbase. But the thing about space is like, okay, what are the odds that not only the Earth is still around, not hit by an asteroid that destroyed it like the dinosaurs, like what are the odds that we're even having this conversation right now? Like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is
yeah.
not good.
Well,
It
look at it
is,
this way. Let's go cosmic down to you, like as a tiny person. Okay, so this is
yeah.
the things that people ignore. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
so why is there, space, and why is there a land we
Hmm.
live on? Why do we see it like kind of flat as these two divided things? Why is there one light? What are the chances that there's one light in our sky during the day and another light in the night that appear almost the exact same size to us, round objects that cover
Hmm.
each other?
Yeah.
What are the chances that the moon is always chasing the sun like a snake? Actually, this is the pattern the moon makes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it
It's
has
like
these waves
circles.
going across it, right? What are the chances that that is happening and that it takes, 28.9 days to have a moon cycle? And
Hmm.
what are the chances that women have a 28.9 day cycle when no one can make a scientific connection? And so
It's not
a
good. It's
there's a
not good.
romantic story in the cosmos. Like to understand the universe, all you have to do is pay attention to to in some degree the experience that you're given because we can talk
Mhm.
about this for 8 hours without notes, but the natural world is so coherent to you. You are a microcosm of your environment. You were given that so that you could see farther and you could see
Mm.
how, let's just say that at some point we might be in something like another version of a womb, in the sense that when we were a baby,
Mhm.
we didn't know what was on the other side, but maybe like I would do to my kids, I'd talk to them through the womb. Like I'd be like, hey, I'll go meet you. And they'd hear your voice and they don't know what that voice is. They don't even know why they have hands yet. Right. But then you
No.
come out in the world and you didn't really need the hands in your lungs yet when you're in the womb, but all of a sudden you have these things. And you're like, oh, like if we could connect the two experiences, we're like, hey, that's what this was for. Well, if people pay close attention, we're getting messages from outside the womb, reverberating in the
Mhm.
world all the time. You're getting wooed up to something bigger and something higher. And if you pay close attention to that and you pay close attention to there are, let's say, desires in you, like why would you ever desire for perfection? Like why does it seem wrong that people die? Like these things are
Mhm.
so native to mankind, yet they feel as if we weren't built for a world like that. So when you start to get into these questions, man, that's a playground for
Yeah. It,
that's
it,
like the big mystery, right? You're realizing that maybe we're in something like a womb and maybe there's something better on the other side and maybe we're given clues, and or big capital H hints on how to
yeah.
get there.
Yeah. It's just, it's really interesting once you start delving into those deep questions and just like you said, we could be here for 8 hours.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, moving on, I guess. So you already answered this question as well, but I'll just spew it out anyways. How do you hope your music resonates with listeners? Is there any specific emotion, intellectual response you're hoping to evoke with your
Oh,
listeners?
well, I guess, but not directly when we're making the music. Like when before you're an artist, you hope that, man, I hope the audience is astonished. I hope that the music is personal to them. I hope that it becomes the soundtrack of their life. Like that's what you need to succeed. But then you go and make a story because you're having an experience in the world, and a story comes to you, and a song comes to you, and you like a fisherman catches a fish, but you as the chef, you didn't make the fish, but you go and cook it and you try to prepare it for an audience. Why? Because you want it to enrich their lives, right? And sometimes that's shaking things up. It's making them uncomfortable, and other times it's giving them hope. It's pouring a little water into a dry desert of their lives. So I mean, those are things like that, but really those goals of mine are completely disconnected from the creative process because when we're in the creative process, we get lost in the song and the story. So I think that's really honestly what we're doing. Like a lot of times if I'm in an interview, I'll reverse engineer why we did something, but
Mhm.
I'm mostly going on instinct. And then later, when I'm getting ready to release it and perfecting it at the end, I start to not just hear it from my own ears. I try to think of friends I know that have particular tastes and fans that have told me, hey, this was my favorite song and here's what I loved about it. Those things will influence me at the end where I'll kind of tap things to like make
Yeah.
it about us. You know what I mean? Like if you're serving a dinner and someone's at the table and they're like, I don't eat coconut, you're like, well, I better not put coconut in it. And you notice that all your fan base doesn't like coconut. You might like it. You leave the coconut off the table and you go do another coconut project. I didn't mean to talk about coconuts so much, but this idiom for a while. So yeah, the idea falls out of the tree like a coconut, and then I prepare it like a nice little rum drink for my audience and hope they, get a nice little happy day at the beach. So that's kind of what you're doing as an artist. But there's this sense, okay, so because so Kate and I are Orthodox Christians, which is like
Okay.
the most ancient form of Christianity that's still in the world,
Hmm.
and we can trace it all the way back. But
Yeah.
so people hear that, like, so in the modern culture, they think of, well, let's say like Christians that do like stadium evangelism, and their
Hmm.
only goal is to create an awkward conversation with you at a dinner table about why you need Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. Like that's not in our music at all. So it's so fun. It's such a funny world because like if I mention that we're Christian, some people will instantly like red flag, red flag. Like this guy is going to be trying to convince
Gosh.
you of God.
Oh
And it's like,
no.
yeah, well, the same thing happens in politics. So we're working on a documentary right now. In
Yeah.
documentaries, let's just say, like, let's think of the Tiger King. Did you ever watch Tiger King?
Okay, I didn't, but I saw so many clips.
Yeah, they've interviewed so many people in that film, but none of them are particularly noble people. Like, right? Like, and some
Mm.
of them are like, this person's just straight up lying. Well, it's funny because we had a clip and it had someone who's a political figure in the clip. Now like in the
Yeah,
documentary,
Tucker Carlson.
yeah, we interview all kinds of
I was
people.
like, holy moly.
And so, we go up and talk to Tucker Carlson in Maine, and I withhold my opinions. I don't know much about him, really. I know that he does, and you can roast him on this, but he does sound like a hazed dolphin when he laughs.
He
And
does.
he's like a hyena in an electric chair. And I kind of like that about him because I'm not annoyed by him because I don't know enough about him. But anyway, the thing is that okay, the documentary's gonna have a ton of people. People see a clip and they're like, I'm done with you. It's like, what the
Yeah.
what's
Yeah,
going on? Like
unfortunately, that does
poor
happen.
people. Yeah, like we can't be friends with people that vote differently. Like I'm not even really in.
You have no idea. Like, I have a whole different world, like, outside of this. Like, over here, I'm like interviewing, like, literally tomorrow. Tomorrow, I am interviewing a guy from Texas who is literally like 19 years old, but is strong Republican values, other stuff like that. But then, like, the next day, it's like, oh, I literally invited Alan Lichtman, who's a professor in Harvard or Yale, but huge, the complete
Yeah,
180. It
yeah,
just
yeah.
doesn't matter. It really
No,
doesn't
yeah,
matter.
and people have to be careful in their politicization because they will push people away. They're
Yeah.
more likely to create the opposite of what they're hoping to have happen. And the same thing's happening with us in the sense that
Mhm.
Right now, like the culture is always swapping. So you can look at like Republicans or the moral majority in the 1980s, where they were
Mm.
they were more like cancel culture and the conservatism. Weren't interested in free speech, and they were
Yeah.
trying to get people bands and artists canceled. And so as in that time, as someone who's growing up want to be an artist, I'm not gonna be interested in them. Well, that kind of flips, right? So as
Yeah,
the
I didn't know
progressive
shit.
culture, as our culture really becomes a progressive culture, now the all of the energy that wants to shut down speech goes to who's ever in the seat, right? And then the free speech goes to the people on the outside. So what's
Yeah,
happening right now
it's
is that
ridiculous.
I get flack from both sides, but the left
Mm.
side is just so much more unhinged when they approach us and talk about it that
Unfortunately, yes.
yeah, it's kind of like, man, I don't want to hang out over there because you're all mad at each other all the time,
Mm.
and me and everyone. And I try not to get too offended because I think that you're
No.
telling yourself when you get offended, you're saying that like you're better than whatever thing you're calling out. And I think that's a pretty hubristic
Yeah.
in the sense that I'm a morally outraged. What I'm saying to everyone, I'm announcing subtly is like, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
And you all should be better like me. It's like, I can't do that. So I can't get involved in these political conversations, but that's why a big thrust of our music is like, yo, get out of it. Like, look at people
Yeah.
as people. They're not your enemy. They have bad ideologies. Let's love each other and talk about it.
Yeah.
You know.
And
So,
that's the crazy thing. I mean, we're talking this literally 3 days from the election.
mhm.
Three
Oh
days.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
not
that's
like
right.
a
There's an
two,
election.
3 days.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's very interesting to see. And the thing is like I hate when that does come up in your music because like yes, there is a religious aspect. Yes, there's a song called Political. But like, dude, if you take one listen, if you take like 5 seconds out of your day, like you'll quickly realize that's not what it's about.
yeah.
That's not at all. Like it's a complete
No, it's what the story's nested in, though. It has to be nested in these things because this is what
yeah.
the world is made of, right? So if I want to tell you a story that helps you navigate the world, I've got to have religion, politics, atheism,
That's just what the world is.
consumerism. I have to have like monks, like people that are all the different
Dark
things
capitalism.
and all the different elements in the world, right? Yeah. So like, um, even that, even like when people are like, "Oh, everyone thinks I'm on the other team," which is funny too. When they get in and listen, when they start to talk to me, they're like,
Yeah.
"I'm not lined up with their thing," and so they're like, "Oh, you're one of those guys." I'm like, "I'm not one of those guys either. Like, I'm my own person. There's not just two ways to be in the world, kids. There's lots of ways to be in the world." And this is
Mm.
what's so funny when you get into like the argumentation about politics, because you notice people fall into it. Is that generally the progressives present an idea
Yeah.
and the conservatives say no to the idea. And so this relationship is really funny because now whatever that idea is becomes the thrust of the argument, not like, is there a better idea? Hey, conservatives, how about you offer a better solution? Or, when you see a progressive who's pushing forward an idea and it's not working, guy. Like maybe it's not working. Like let's
Change
dream up
it. You could
something
just do
better,
something different.
improve, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's
the
not a
problem
bad
is
thing.
yeah, most people what they want, they don't necessarily know what they want, and it might be to punish their enemies. Like their solutions might be to punish their enemies.
Like,
They don't realize that, and so it's not how we're going to come together. There has to be a recognition that we need different perspectives. We need people who see opportunity in new and
mhm.
progressive things, and we need people who are going to rescue and protect wisdom from the past. There's no way to improve if we forget what we've learned that was good, and there's definitely no way to improve if we don't update things that are failing and bad. So the whole polemic of in the dialectic that happens in
Mhm.
the modern world is one of the things we're trying to transcend. I think it's a waste of
Yeah,
time, and
you're
I
just
want
trying
to
to get above that.
yeah I want to see people as people first, not just like I
Yeah,
define them by their ideology and throw them off to the side.
yeah.
Sorry that we took this rabbit trail, but it's just
No,
it's
you're all
kind of
good.
well timed, and it kind of runs to like a fevered pitch right around an election where you're like, dude, you're none of you
three
are happy.
days.
Yeah, stop.
But yeah, I like for me personally, I'm like the weirdest conservative ever because I went to France and I know our budget. I'm a finance major, well, becoming a finance major, and like I'm a conservative, but at the same time, I like there's no reason why we shouldn't have free healthcare. At the same time, I'm huge for nuclear energy. Like,
Mhm.
like, like, I don't know why, like, some progressives aren't pushing for nuclear energy because it's the cleanest form of energy as well as the cheapest, which could create jobs and all that different stuff. But anyways, I should probably move on. Uh, So I got two
You're stuck
questions
in
that are
politics.
actually the hardest for
All
a
right.
musician because it
Yeah.
always is different. Who is your favorite artist and who is your favorite song?
Okay, so right
Or what is it?
now, my favorite artist, I I'm in a rut. This is not going to be interesting to people, maybe. I'm in a Russian composer phase. So I really went on like a 10-year kick of composers. And so I just can't get enough of Stravinsky and Rachmaninoff at the moment, and there's some other, because I said before I'm Eastern Orthodox, there's some Orthodox
Hmm.
Russian music that is just like, it melts. I just absolutely melt when I hear it. And if you go into one of these like incredibly appointed churches and there's this music is being sung by the choir, it's it's the end. You're just ruined. You're like, I'm screwing around in life. I'm playing with little, toys in dirt, and then there's this masterwork of artistry happening that's in completely capturing and engulfing me. It's a different story. So in that capacity, yes. Modern, really, one of my guilty pleasures right now is a band. They've been around for a few years. Is I don't know how, but they found me. I don't know if it's a really long band name, but I think it's a quote from Back to the Future where Doc Brown's like, "I don't know how, but they found me." Um, yeah, so I think it's a Back to the Future quote about
Yeah.
the when he steals the uranium. And anyway, that band, man, they can write a pop song and they can mix a song. They're great. And all the bands in the prog circles we run around with, I really love Knower, Knower. Knower is kind of
I don't
awesome.
think so.
The drummer for that, what's his name? Oh my gosh, he's brilliant. I think he does clowncore too. But the problem is with my musical library, you're gonna find it to be something like, you ever heard the old trope about I don't know, when you live in Hollywood, this is what you get. It's like basically like, oh, don't go to a hairdresser with good hair. All the best hairdressers have bad hair. And if you followed me around and listened to what I listened to in my car, you'd be like, this guy has bad hair. Because I'll listen to things for different reasons than just like, hey, what's going to match my mood right now. So I don't know if I have a proper relationship with modern music anymore to be relatable.
I'm not good either. Don't worry. Like I listen to the wackiest stuff you can imagine.
Oh, okay, okay, good. Well, I like your hat, so I'm
Thank
glad
you.
that combo. So I could have guessed
I
that maybe a
appreciate it.
little. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like someone I'd be friends with in real life. Um, okay,
Yeah.
so what else we got?
It's
What you got
crazy.
next? That wasn't
Yeah.
that tough. You
So,
lied.
okay, this is probably my favorite question. This is like literally the first question I typed up. How do you come up with your amazing guitar solos, man?
Oh, that's funny. Well,
So
it's funny.
good.
Um, for a long when I was like a high school, I was like, I'm a guitar player. And when I got out of high school, I was like, I'm an artist. I wasn't thinking guitar was just like one of the brushes you pick up.
Mhm.
So the when I was in high school, I wasn't my family, all musicians, like extended family, both sides of the family, musicians,
Yeah.
entertainment. My parents were like you know, they almost seemed like an arranged marriage in that capacity. So everyone played piano, but no one played guitar really, like except for fiddling around and like strumming.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, we need a guitar player if I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I picked up the guitar. I moved from piano to the guitar, and then the guitar made me better at piano, and then that made me better at bass and cello and drums and all the other things I played.
Yeah.
So what happened with guitar when I was in high school? That really I was trying to find an identity in the world. And if your identity in the world is guitar player, that might be too low of an identity. Like it's not, that's you're just a person doing a skill. And so I eventually moved out of that identity, but like I didn't have any examples of guitar players around me outside of my guitar teacher who really didn't play for me, just taught me. And so I would put on Van Halen, I'd put on this guy, Yngwie Malmsteen, these neoclassical guitarists, and I didn't know at first that I wasn't able or I shouldn't be able to as like a 13-year-old to play what they were playing. So but like Wile E. Coyote or the Roadrunner when
Yeah.
they runs out over the bridge and he doesn't realize about gravity and he runs back. Like I was
Yeah.
doing that. Like I didn't know that it was too hard to play, so I just learned it. And I learned to play it and then I learned to play it and sound like them, when
Mhm.
you do an imitation of someone. And that was the start. So when it came down to solos, I think what I eventually landed on in a solo is that it needs to be an extension of the pattern of the song. It's not just some arbitrary moment to show off, although some of it's going to be difficult to play,
Mhm.
but it's an extension of the idea of the song. So, if it comes after a bridge or a chorus, there should be something to the pattern of it where it feels like it's part of that world. It's not like you're at a Chinese restaurant and someone just gave you chicken parmesan. It just has to fit. So the other thing was for me is even if it was fast and difficult, I wanted people to be able to sing along with it in some way where they could anticipate. It wasn't just a bunch of cool riffs put together. So I always approach it as like a composition. So I'm not a huge fan of just going out live. I can and just improvising because,
Mhm.
what's better, your very first idea or even if your first idea is great, like refining that idea is better. So I always really sculpt and craft those solos, and I generally play them note for note live as well, because I don't believe I think the people are waiting to hear me play that, and especially
Yeah.
now it's everything with a computer. Everyone's so incredulous, like, oh,
Mhm.
I doubt you can really sing that live. That sounds like audio, or like, oh, that's probably editing. And then when you go and play it live, like note for note, and it sounds the same way, they're like, okay. So I feel like
Like,
you get that. And
damn.
plus, I feel like I get kind of disappointed sometimes if the bands venture too far out from what the song I'm waiting for to hear is.
Yeah.
Although I've got examples of that going awesome too when I'm at a show, but so often it leaves you kind of hollow and flat. So I like to write my best solo I can come up with for that song that fits the
Hmm.
pattern of the song, and then play it verbatim for the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
that's
I
kind of, and I'm
mean,
not bored. I don't get bored doing that, so I keep doing it.
that's good. Yeah, I keep doing that. Like every time I show Dirt Poor Robin to my friends, like at the beginning they're like, maybe they're not interested or whatnot, and then I get to like the guitar solo sections or like the instrumentals, and they're like, whoa, where the hell did this come from? And
Right.
I'm like this is a complete 180, and I'm just like, I'm telling you, man, this is why they're good. You gotta listen to them.
They're
That's why you
sneaky.
gotta trust the process.
Yeah, well, I think there is a temptation when you pick up an instrument to want to be seen as a virtuoso. So that
Hmm.
means that you're going to try to include things that other people can't do easily. And that feels very arbitrary to me because you might notice there's two experiences you have with music. One is like, um, you could see someone, YouTube's filled with this, right? It's just
Yeah.
someone blowing your mind with their dexterity and their execution. But if you pay attention to your inner state, you're not in that music. You're watching it like you watch a three-ring circus, like you watch an acrobat. Like you're in, or like you pick up a snow globe and shake it and investigate it. You're not in it. So I noticed that also, like someone like David Gilmour, who was in Pink Floyd, who played these kind of slow, emotive solos, or Eric Clapton. And I noticed with them, there was a part of me that wanted them to be a virtuoso, which they probably were to some degree, um, that was disappointed by the skill of it. But then quickly I would move into totally forgetting about that and just getting wrapped up in the song. So those things can perform mutually exclusively in music sometimes. Like this guy is like the circus acrobat musician, and this one is the heart musician. It was like, I want to do both. Like, can both of those things meet without sacrificing one or the other?
Mm.
So, but to do that, it means you have to like understand that people might miss that you're a good musician. Like technically, they might miss that because it's
Yeah.
not always called for is the greatest technical difficult performance. In fact, most of the time in my experience, that those are only good in proportion to how much you don't do it, so that when you do it, it's fresh and exciting and it brings the audience to life. So that's kind of that's kind of my ethic with it anyway. So I'm
Yeah.
there and I only play with people that are there to serve the song. Like we're all here to make the song better. We're not here to make ourselves
Yeah.
or the career better because that's what matters to the audience is their experience
Mhm.
with the song more than what do they think of me later when they think about me. It's like who cares if they think about you later? Like that's not the
Yeah.
point of making a song. So
Yeah, for
I want them to
sure.
be impressed. I want them to think I'm smart. Whatever. Yeah.
So, yeah. But moving on. So I know you're super busy with the documentary, big family, got a lot going on, but
Yeah.
I don't 100% know how often you do live shows, or do you have any plans to do live shows?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Here's the weird thing. Our live shows
Yeah,
are almost always private events now. And this
really.
happens, well, here's what happens. So we have four kids, right? They have school, they have friends,
Yeah.
they have, theater, they have lessons.
Mm.
It's all local.
Yeah.
So if we want to go out for any extended time, we think that's like a major rejection of our first and important duty to them. Like, how many movies have you seen where like the dad is running off? You know, like this is the whole point of the movie Hook, for example.
The
Like, dad's
80s,
in
the
the business
classic
and
'90s
he's
movie.
not paying attention to the kids and he's always on
Gonna
the phone.
play catch with the sun.
Like, I couldn't justify that. So we stopped touring once the our kids started to pile up in the house.
Yeah.
So and so what we end up doing now is that we've got a big audience now. I mean, we've got over 100 million
Hmm.
streams in our
Yeah.
career, and we've started doing this full time. You know, I stopped working really on mostly on other projects besides our own projects, but some film projects I work on as well. So once we did that, it was like, well, we started getting requests to do like conferences and strange things like the ARC conference. This is something that'll drive people nuts. I'll post about it and just watch the people get mad at me. But
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson has invited us out on tour a couple times. He likes the band, if you know who Jordan Peterson is. If you know who he is, you probably don't know who he is because you haven't been with him in person and maybe only heard hit pieces about him or whatever. But we'll go out. He'll ask us to go on tour. It makes
Hmm.
people mad. It's like, dude, like if you came out on tour with Jordan Peterson, you'd be amazed at him and his wife. Like they're they're so nice to everyone. Like the people you think they hate is totally not the case. So when you go to like a big arena, like
Yeah.
all the people that work there, they're normally like just doing their job and they're used to you walking right past them and not seeing them and not talking to them. Jordan and like Tammy like will entirely change that environment by the end of their performance. And then our band was doing the same thing. And so everywhere we went, it was like everybody was so
Hmm.
happy. Well, so the problem is that, people would give me major crap for that. And he invited us to play ARC, which is going to be all these world leaders, and it's pretty much a
Yeah.
conservative organization. Well, the problem is I'll get invited on someone else's podcast or thing, and then here comes some religious right person who's like, "You shouldn't platform that person." And so the problem is that all of our opportunities right now are like more conservative religious Christian circles. Um,
Okay.
and
Huh.
so that can really be frustrating to people because again, like we could go out and tour clubs, lose money, and lose our closeness with our children and
Hmm.
our community, and we're not going to do that. So
No,
we
it's
end up
not a
doing
good
these one-off
investment.
private events or higher paying shows. So the show's
Yeah.
got to pay us pretty well to come out now.
Hmm.
Um, because everybody in our band they're awesome, but they have lives and families too.
Yeah.
And so people that play with us, we need to compensate them. So I can't just go out and tour nightclubs, even with like 1,000 people and make ends meet. So sadly for
Yeah.
people doing that. So, but this year we're doing something different. I think
Oh.
really, I was always thinking about this. Like, you really, when you go out to see a band in person, you go to
Hmm.
see the band. You don't, no one says, "Hey, I heard a band last night." They always say, "I saw a band last night." So when we come out this
Yeah.
time around doing some of these private shows and like high ticket price tours that people aren't going to want to buy a ticket into because they're not going to go hear Jordan Peterson lecture or, they don't want to go to ARC or they don't want to go to, my friend Ruslan, he's a evangelical Christian, invited us to do his
Yeah.
conference. They don't want to do that. Well, when we go around, we're going to plan like in some big centers. So I'm in London in February next year, and we're going to do like a meet and greet, like a pub thing, because we've
Oh,
got, just in Spotify, I think we got like 3,000, monthly listeners just from London.
yeah.
Not that we fit 3,000 people in a pub, and not that 3,000 people come out. People don't come out as often as they used to for anything. And home is kind
Hmm.
of awesome with all your streaming services and your phone and your video games and
Yeah.
your eats. So people aren't coming out anymore. So when we go out the road this year, I want to go meet people and maybe do a couple of house shows, like surprise things, like
Hmm.
some people that have been with us for a long time come and perform at their house for them and their friends. So there's going to be some stuff. So if you follow us on all of our socials, you can keep up with that.
Well, you're always invited here in Iowa. I only asked that question because
Because you have a venue in Iowa,
I
right? Or
do. The
yeah,
ideal. It's a
yeah.
1920s speakeasies that's been around here for years and years and years, but has a lot of history. It's a
I would
great
love to
place.
do that. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that sounds ideal.
Well, I was just asking because like I was like, okay, I have to see these guys live once in my lifetime, at least once. I don't know when. I just because I go down to Florida all the time. Like
Yeah, yeah. Come down here. No, no, no.
January,
Look,
I'm literally down there. So,
yeah, look me up.
um,
Well, I'm in Greece in part of January, but for the
yeah.
film. But yeah, look us up, man. We'll hang out.
All right.
Bring some
Cool.
other local friends around. Yeah, we did some things in person already this year. It was a blast getting to meet people.
Hmm.
Uh, some film festivals, like Queen of the Night was in a film festival here in St. Augustine, and a bunch of people
Nice.
posted about it, and a bunch of people showed up. So we get to meet all these like lovely people that were within
Yeah.
driving distance of here. And now they wait outside my house and take pictures of me. Then they never do. Everybody's really cool. Like people are always afraid that like they're gonna be so weird with you, but I don't know. I found like we've hit the greatest people following us right
Yeah.
now. So I'm pretty optimistic about them not being creeps. Um,
I'll just show up at your house on a
yeah,
random
yeah, no,
Tuesday
they're
on January.
I'm sure there's people. I don't put my address online. Don't worry.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah, yeah. I invite people over I know that won't dox me.
Well, nobody can find me because Iowa doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, no. You're like, what is it like Des Moines? Des Moines is all that people can like remember. Like that's it. That's the
Maybe.
right now.
Well, people always mispronounce it because it's French.
They're like
They'll go
Idaho.
Des
Yeah,
Moses.
Des Moines. Des Moines.
Moses. Yeah.
Yeah, when they get confused about Idaho, they're like, I love Coeur d'Alene. Love okay, Washington. That's close, right? No.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, Iowa's fine. If we get up there, we'd love to come up.
yeah. This
But
guy
we'll see.
like
We'll
just
see
three
what
hours
the
from Chicago. But yeah,
well, if
if
I'm
it's
on the road,
convenient, I don't want to like make it inconvenient for you or
yeah, yeah, for sure.
unprofitable.
So
But
well, if
yeah.
if the problem is though, if we the more time we spend on the road, the less we've been making music, and I'm already backed
Mm.
up in my brain. Like you know how you have like maybe a reading list. There's like, hey, these 10 books I want to read, and then suddenly
Mm.
it's 20 and 30, and then you just don't read them any.
And yeah, yeah.
So I have the same thing with album ideas and movie ideas. So like I'm starting to back up. So the one we're
Mhm.
gonna do next, I've been cooking for like 6 years. Like when Dead Horse came out, like we had been cooking that for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Locks cooked for a long time, and
Oh yes.
Firebird only cooked for about two
Oh, that's so
years. But
good.
yeah, the one we have coming out now is has been cooking for a long time.
I'm
Uh,
excited.
yeah, so I'm really excited about it too. But that's just me. Hopefully everybody likes it because it is a slight every you know what you noticed every album of ours is a slight like we give the audience a
Mm.
chance to be mad at us because we do depart from whatever we just did, maybe enough for people to be frustrated. They're like, "Where's all the synths?" And like we did
Yeah.
Queen of the Night and it's vaudevillian. If you come in through that, like kind of vaudevillian 1920s throwback, and it's like, why does the
Yes,
next
that's what I
record have?
loved.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
where's
So
Queen of the Night 2.0? Where's
I know. Well, that's kind of what this is. This other it
Oh,
there's two universes we write in. One is the Dead Horse universe, and the other one right now is the Ravenlocks universe.
yeah.
So Queen of the Night takes place for me in the Ravenlocks universe around the
That
same
makes
time.
sense. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense, actually.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So really that Queen of the Night, even though it's supposed to be a film that is the filmmaker in like the prior to 1920s vision of the future.
Yeah.
And so this other story is a Western fairy tale. We're telling the new story, and it takes place around the same era as the end of the Old West. And it's the old gunslinger at the end of his life. It is his fantastic journey he goes on when he encounters a spirited world in the wilderness he never knew was under his feet. So that's the new
Wow.
record. It'll be fun. I hope.
That sounds super cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, just moving on to save time. I don't know how much you got, but if
Yeah,
there
I gotta
was
go. That's
this
fine.
is this actually has come true most of the cases. I try to make this happen. If there was anyone you could collaborate with on a song, who would it be?
They're dead. That's the problem. So
Whoops. Okay, I can't make that happen,
no, okay.
unfortunately.
So yes,
For-
Benjamin's necromancy is on point.
I've done it once, but well, not dead people, but I've done like other
He has
collaborations before.
resurrected
I got a little
Debussy.
more.
Yes. Okay. Living musicians that I would collaborate with, would be fun, and I think I'd be out of my league in some ways. Would be like someone like
I
Jacob
never know.
Collier. Um,
Okay.
yeah, he's really gifted. So I want to see how that gift operates in person, and collaborating with him that would be cool. So you don't need to make that happen because I really don't have time for much collaboration. I
Uh,
would maybe like to collaborate with someone outside of my own genre. Like, so like people suggest like, hey, what about the Deer Hunter? And I think Casey's awesome. I think they're great.
mhm,
But I'd like to find someone maybe that wasn't like trying to make sense of their thing they did that's different than ours. That could be fun too.
mhm,
So I think of certain hip hop artists and so every once in a while I'm like, hey, would there ever be a place in the world for that kind of thing? Or um Bjork collaborated with Arvo Parte, if you depend on how you want to say
mhm.
it. Is a composer, and he did some orchestrations for her. And I was like, yeah, I could collaborate with that guy. That would be great. So someone symphonic, but also I'd like to like do a Cirque du Soleil show, write a show for Cirque du Soleil or something like that. The couture, that would be amazing. But yeah, collaboration wise, that or with like philosophers, like, hey, give me your philosophy, and then let's integrate it in music, that kind of stuff. So it's not really a usable answer for you. I'm sorry. These are not things you
No,
can access to.
that's
Um,
okay.
Yeah. But I'm collaborating with some people in the Discord who actually bought a song from us during our Kickstarter, and
Oh
that's been a
wow.
blast so far.
That's
Yeah. So
cool.
a
That's
couple of
pretty
guys in
fun.
there combined their efforts where we were supposed to, write a song based on their request where they're like, hey, we want to write it with you. And I'm like, this sounds like a blast. Let's do it. So
Yeah.
uh, two of the
I
guys in there
forgot
teamed
about
up
that.
and pooled their resources and we're writing a song with them right now.
Yeah. I'll just moving on to other questions I have for people. What is the hardest part of the songwriting process for you?
I don't I don't think it's hard. Sorry. I don't, because some people talk about getting writer's block or getting stuck.
Mhm.
I guess the hardest part is for me to sign off on it, where I
Okay.
feel like it's done. I feel like I've combed over this thing and because words are very important to us. And so really you look through a song and you're done with the lyrics and we do have, I think what makes the lyric good very often is that the word that ends the sentence is the most important word in the sentence. In other words, if that word got stripped away, the whole sentence would fall apart and mean nothing. So it's not like a word you tag on, like now or tonight or something to make the line rhyme. It's essential to the line. So if I and that I think that makes rhymes less cheesy, but then also like you'll find that certain words do more than another. Like the just a quick example I give is like if I'm in the song, let's imagine I'm sitting by the ocean and thinking.
Mm,
Um, Thinking might not be the best word. Pondering, okay, we're getting better. Oh, fathom. Okay, fathom's better because we understand this is about exploring the depths. It's also a unit of nautical measurement. So now the word's participating more in my environment, and so
mm,
it's saying way more. There are lots of words. If you start to become really interested in words, like there's a lot of words that really carry a lot more of a story in it. But this is also like I use an example from our own lyrics too. Like there's a song, very old song we did called "When All Is Said and Done," and I try to avoid preachiness in songs. Like you don't want to preach at people, so
yeah.
you embed it in a story or something. So I could say if I'm gonna go to you, maybe I write a line down. It's a bullet point, just so I remember the thing I want to say here. And it's like, hey, don't be judgmental, right? Okay, don't be judgmental. Okay, that's not very poetic. How about this? Lay down your gavel, right? So that sentence has a courtroom. It has you as the judge getting ready to
Mhm.
make a judgment. It has a lot more weight to it, and it's a story. So it's a lot easier to inhabit a story than it is to inhabit propositional information. So that might be the hardest part because I really don't sign off on that when I'm writing a song easily. Like I will tweak that up into the moment we record the song in my head. I'm always testing it. I'm always like pressure testing it, like a velociraptor is trying to look for the weak spot in the cage to get out of Jurassic Park. So that I guess if I was going to say something was tough, but I
Yeah,
have a blast with that. So generally I have fun with the whole process. So
that's
things you
good.
have fun with you don't necessarily think is tough. But yeah, I'm working hard at the same time, even though I'm having fun.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I always get different answers with that. It's kind of like you said. There are some artists I met that do get writer's block. Like you
Yeah.
said, with your next coming songwriting, it's been 6 years in the making. They would
Yeah.
put certain songs off to the side, so that's very
Yeah, it's another
interesting.
conversation, but I can tell people how to never get writer's block if they're good at writing, I guess. The way to do it, but you have to be collecting things all the time. So here I'll give you a quick example of that. So
Okay,
there's a friend of mine, he basically runs an organization that's very similar to the Peace Corps.
okay.
And he's been all over the world. So he would forego a dependable and safe life with his family and kids for the sake of,
Mhm.
let just in a general sense, like it sounds like a platitude, but making the world a better place. So, he's just a little bit older than me now. And when you sit down at a dinner with him, he knows how to talk to anybody because he's talked to everyone in the world and never a dull moment. Like he traded what people are trading for, like status and experience and money and security. He traded for an adventure and having a rich life in the world. So it really starts to shine when someone starts to get older. Like, what was their life for? Were they just trying to get enough money so they could retire and play golf? Or do they have a real life of adventure out in the world? And so the two things are you can't compare, but it also goes the same way for the singer songwriter, for example, is that you have to drink in the world in a very deep way so that you have this pile, like you're like smog sitting on all of this gold. And when you need the idea, you're like, oh, I left that over here. Boom. I left this over here. Boom. And then
Mhm.
also musical training comes in with that because it's not just inspiration. You also, the more skill you have, the more the quicker you can get to the thing you're inspired to find. And then you put the inspiration into the performance of those things. So you have to develop skill and you have to develop experiences and you have
Mhm.
to drink in the world in not a superficial, fast way, a deep way. And then you'll find that you really don't get stuck. And if you do get stuck, move on to something else you need to work on before you start to teach yourself like the panic that sets in when you get stuck. Because people will start to get, yeah. And one of the things that makes someone suck live is that they're afraid of screwing up. Like, think about that. Like, what makes you screw up
Yeah,
live is that you get too afraid
fortunately.
of screwing up. So you can't waste your energy on these kind of things. So it'll create this cycle. It'll create these terrible cycles. So anyway,
Yeah.
drink in the world deeply. Don't be superficial. Listen really closely to people you don't like. Listen closely to people you love. Listen, drink everything in and store it and save it because even stuff you don't like can be used for a villain in your stories. Or so there. Yeah, you want to be sitting on a
Yeah.
pile of experiences and things you know that you can access at any time.
Yeah, for sure. So I do have an upcoming question that is kind of interesting for you, I guess. If you could play at any venue, where would it be?
Probably I played at a couple of them, which is kind of awesome. One of them was a weird one. It was the Palace in Louisville, Kentucky. I just always thought it was beautiful. There's an actual carbon copy version of that in San Antonio. So it's like these two
Really?
theaters were built. And I just remember going there and being like, man, this looks like us. This looks like it would fit our aesthetic. And it was so beautiful to watch music there. We finally get to play there. And that was kind of awesome. But no, I don't really think about venues. It's kind of more like
Mm,
I'd like to see some more stuff in films, maybe. Like that would be the venue I'd like to see
mm.
more of our stuff in to be able to contribute more into the cinema because there's something so wonderful about that experience in a story when it hits at the right moment and the right song comes on, and then that you keep that song with you for the rest of your life because you had that
Yeah.
experience that the movie afforded it and it complemented. So yeah, maybe I'd like to see more of our stuff licensed in movies and television. That would be cool. Oh, it'd probably make us money too. That's another not a terrible thing, because I
Yeah.
do give me your money. No.
Capitalism. That says a lot about our society.
Yes, give me.
It says a lot about our society.
Yes, yes, yeah, I know. So anyway,
So I'm gonna move on to a couple of fan questions I asked the Discord server because
yeah,
they were
yeah. Let's
giving me
let's
a
rock
bunch
through
of
them.
them. But so one's pretty good. What's your favorite song from Firebird? What's your favorite
Oh
song?
my. No, I don't really have it like that to tell you. I would say that it just depends on what role they're playing on the album. I don't have a favorite really. No, I don't. I think I could give you categorical favorites. Like I like the production on certain ones more than the other. So one of the ones I
Okay,
really
sure.
it didn't land with the audience as much, but you'll never hear it coming. I thought I like we really got that kind of
I kind
80s
of like that.
nostalgia in it.
Yeah.
And so the production of it I really liked. I really liked what we did with the vocals on Beauty Will Save the World because
Mm,
this is more of like what we did with Come Yezu, which is a song on Queen of the Night where Kate and I fake a choir by singing tons of parts at different points of the mic and changing our voices. And so I like the way that
that
came
song.
out. I really felt like Firebird for us, like the song landed really nice at the end of the record because sometimes our stories end on more of a tragic note, and it was nice to have an uplifting note change. And so I enjoy that song for where it is and what it did. And but no, I don't think I have a favorite, but I have favorites for different
Yeah.
like I might like one guitar solo better than the other. I think Fever Dream might be my favorite guitar solo on the
I liked
record.
Fever Dream.
Mostly things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked for me personally, I like political. I mean,
Hmm.
from that one, but yeah, Fever Dream was really good. I mean, it was a fever dream.
Yeah. And people are like,
Crazy,
what
I
does this
know.
song mean? I'm like, yeah,
Whoa,
exactly.
whoa, wait, what? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So actually, speaking of Firebird, so for Firebird, how much AI was used? How long did it take you to make those videos? Because I know
Yeah,
it
so the
took.
video. So here's the thing. This kind of bothers people, and I kind of don't mind bothering people with this because people have really strong opinions on AI. So did I. Like, so in
Yeah.
Dead Horse, we're talking about like this is prior to it really coming on people's radar that the dangers of this new sort of generative AI and these large language models. That
Mhm.
was already on our radar in like 2018, 2019. So we wrote it into the story, and obviously I'm very skeptical of these things, right? But
Hmm.
then at the same time, I realize it was sort of reckless to comment on these things and not have an personal experience. Like I totally avoided them
Yeah.
all across the board. And then my opinions of those things changed very much once I experienced them. So now I'd still want nothing to do with them, but it's not what I thought it was. So
Hmm.
part of how we decided to do that, we're like, well, listen, the whole the whole story of Firebird is existing in this world where people's perceptions are being manipulated through artificially manipulated.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
wouldn't it be wise as an artist to maybe try to incorporate some of these manipulations into the
Hmm.
video? And then I also do another thing to let people understand what's going on. Like we put our stuff on screens inside of screens. And I don't
Yeah.
want them to forget what they're doing. This is not a real experience in the world, right? And so I'm kind of like by putting things on the screen I'm reminding you that you need to go out and have a life with these ideas in the real world. You can't just sit behind screens. But AI was so unruly and it's getting better all the
I
time.
know it's scary.
Yeah,
A
and
little bit
so it
scary.
will break people's hearts eventually when the we've outsourced our humanity,
Hmm.
our beauty to a computer. I think that's a terrible mistake. And not just to mention, we can't never really true that because the computer is actually giving us back what we've done already in the world.
Hmm.
It's not generating new ideas. It doesn't know what it's looking at. It doesn't sense a sense of reward from it. It doesn't have a body that has an experience in the world. So
No.
we've handed it over to a computer, and it's not the computer really doing it. It's still us doing it because we did what informed the computer and we told the computer what's good and what's bad.
Yeah.
So it's not what I thought it was, but I'm not very enthusiastic about the AI.
No.
I'm glad that people are skeptical of it, honestly. Like when people were giving us a hard time about incorporating that, I was like, yeah, you probably should. Like, but it's also it kind of fits the vision of the project. And also I'm being kind of reckless and stupid by not using this thing and then shooting it down. And so I actually
Yeah.
shoot it down for some different reasons now than I would originally. So
Hmm.
that's why it was incorporated. I would not expect to see any of it moving forward, but I don't, I'm not going to make that promise anyway. So I don't know what's going to happen in the world.
Yeah, no, and I don't think much people do.
Hmm.
So, this is an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I think it could happen, but I don't know. Will there be a dedicated disco funk track in the future?
Disco funk. Well,
Disco funk. I
so if
don't
people
know.
want some disco funk, there was a band I was in called No More Kings. So our 2008 release, the album was called And the Flying Boombox. So you put that on the first two tracks, maybe even the third. It's disco funk. It's not serious stuff. It's like it's pure nostalgia to some
Hmm.
degree. And then there's another record I did for a guy. He actually is a friend of mine for a long time, but he was on The Voice one year. Like he got the season 8,
Wow.
it was Dave Moisen. And when he was getting ready to go on The Voice, he realized there was this really aggressive contract where they were like, once he's on The Voice, they own like a part of his career and his music and stuff. He's like, we need to get a record
Uh,
out before that. And so we wrote a record called Heavyweight. And yeah, the first track on that is called Animal, and that is a straight up disco funk track. So you can
maybe
check out
that's where I
Animal
got
by
the question.
Dave Moisen. Yeah. And you,
Animal by Dave Moisen.
yep.
Awesome. Well, so this is kind of another interesting question. Everybody's got really good questions on the Discord server.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
What's your
because of time,
favorite?
just give me two more, and
Yeah.
we have to cut it down. I'm
What's your
sorry.
favorite genre to play and listen to?
Yeah, classical. I love chant. I mean, this is back to the bad hairdresser thing, like as far as people are concerned. So they're gonna find that what I listen to is way outside of it. Um, I have high hopes for jazz in the future. I think jazz has gone off the rails and become sort of self-indulgent over time, but there's some artists coming back, like Yeba or Thundercat,
Yeah.
and I love them, man. I could listen to them all day long. So yeah, that.
I'm excited. I'm a huge jazz fan. I mean, electro swing is very ingrained to that
Mhm.
genre.
Yeah, and obviously
So,
we can go there. You know, we
yeah,
can do with
let's
Enchante because I didn't
fucking
use
go.
electronic. I didn't do electronic instruments, but that's totally electro swing.
Yeah, it's such a good song too.
Well, thank you.
So my last question for you today. What are your long-term goals for the band? What are any dream projects you're hoping to bring to life? Like what any projects out there?
Yeah, well, I mentioned that we have a Western fairy tale.
Hmm.
That's what I want to do. So we have. I don't even want to say this out loud. We have a film and it's a total nostalgia, like B movie, horror movie film idea to go with a record, which would take us back into like the Dead Horse
Cool.
universe. And it takes place in Daytona Beach here. And it's basically an apocalyptic story. It's the end of the world, and all of the classic movie monster categories are coming back to the world's most famous beach for the apocalypse. And so, but it's kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw Kung Fury. It was like this little like nostalgic, like it looks like kind of I think the word is synthwave or um anyway, it's kind of like this hazy VHS kind of style of movie that looks like it was made in the 80s, and it's awesome. It's just really cool. And so it'd be more of that feel. So it wouldn't be very realistic, the film, but it would, have this kind of like drug trip 80s vibe to this story. So that's one of the things I'm excited about. Outside of that, we have other film ideas. I'm excited about the documentary working. Hopefully we
Yes.
do some music for that. I'm going to do some collaboration with people. So
Sweet.
we'll write some original songs for that, and we'll see what's next. But I don't imagine that we're going to do music forever. Not
Hmm.
that I wouldn't do some type of music, but I don't think that, you have to enjoy Dirpo Robbins while it's here, because
Yeah.
eventually, like, my hip's going to break and I won't be able to do it anymore. So
Let's hope not. Like, I'm
yeah, I
glad
know, and
you're
I know we're
here. I'm glad you
hopefully a couple
stuck
of
with
decades from
music.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I can still jump around and do splits on stage, but
There
we'll
you go.
see how much longer.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Neil, so much for being here. Thank you for taking some time out of your day just to answer a couple questions, not just for me, but the rest of the Discord server. I hope that everything goes well with the documentary. I can't wait to see that. I can't wait for other releases. I can't wait.
Hey man, this thank you so much. This was such a your great interview. This was such an easy
Yeah.
interview. You don't understand as a musician how many times like you're asked, like you're saying these are difficult questions. You actually thought through it. And
Mm.
so often you get asked the same questions, like what does your band name mean? What, like, and like just things you don't want to answer, and you didn't do that once. That's just amazing. Like
Awesome.
that, you're incredible.
I mean,
Uh,
there are some questions that I ask like basically everyone, but
yeah, and I
I
probably
try
just
to
mentioned one.
delve into more. I try to delve into more than just that. Like I need specific Dirt Poor Robin
No,
questions.
you gave me questions I really wanted to answer. I appreciate that. That's rare.
Yeah.
So all right.
All right. Well, enjoy your rest of your day.
Yeah, you
Awesome.
got it.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, man. Let me know when this is going up live, and
It might
I'll
take a
start it
couple
out.
days for
Yeah,
editing,
no
but
no
yeah.
rush. Yeah,
Yeah.
wait for the election to clear, bro.
Oh my
We talked about
God, don't
election
even get me
stuff,
started on that.
but it might be helpful for people to hear some of the stuff we said after the election. Uh,
We can do a
yeah.
post review. We can do a
Oh,
post review.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that'd be crazy. All right.
All right.
Thank you
So,
so
okay, man, I
much.
gotta run.
All
I was
right.
able to text my wife and tell her to pick up my daughter, so
So,
that's why I had some extra
yeah,
time.
tell Kate I said hi.
Yeah, you got it. Okay.
Awesome.
Good. Get you later,
See
man. Bye.
ya. Bye.